Mark Carney and his nation building project with the premiers, that he had a meeting on the June 2nd. This is a meeting that Mark Carney has been waiting for. This meeting was hosted by Scott Moe in Saskatoon, which is capital of Saskatchewan. And in this meeting, there was a lot of issues that were being discussed, and according to some spokespeople from that meeting, they said most of the issues will never be publicized, just because they only want to shortlist the issues that will actually make the shortlist, that will actually be on the agenda that they want to change. But here are some things. During the meeting, Mark Carney proposed new legislation that he wants he wants trade and business through provinces to occur in a unison, and he wanted to propose a new legislation called One Canadian Economy. Now, one problematic thing that I find in Canada is that you have 13 provinces, and each province has its own different regulations, set of rules, and set of laws. The premiers have their own ideology and they have their own political bias. By saying that, there are also differences on how they conduct trade between one province to another province. I mean, now you have seen some headlines in the news that provinces are banding together and they are signing memorandums of understanding (MOUs) on freeing up some of the terms and conditions when it comes to internal trade and making it more barrier free. This, I think, should have been done. When we were amid the tariff situation before Justin Trudeau had resigned from Donald Trump in March or April 2025, it was then when Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau, I remember, they were coming out and making some huge statements that they want to bring some changes around the internal trade between the provinces. Carney, during this meeting, proposed new legislation during this meeting, and he wants trade and business to occur between the provinces in a unison. And he called his new proposed legislation a One Canadian Economy. And apparently, in this new legislation, he wants the trade and the business to occur between all the provinces without any barriers, for the flow of goods to occur completely barrier free. Check this out, Sunny. During March and April 2025, when Donald Trump had announced tariffs on Canada, it was Chrystia Freeland, then Deputy Prime Minister, and Justin Trudeau who came out and wanted to propose some changes to internal trade, but could not make all the necessary changes that should have been made. And right now, why is it that the premiers themselves are coming out and making this bold move of making this internal trade barrier free, when this should have been done even before the tariffs, even much before Donald Trump's presidency? From the very beginning, why were these barriers never taken down? Because of these barriers, it is a small business who has to spend 10 times more. Just take an example of liquor. One province who's manufacturing liquor, when they have to sell liquor to another province, they have to comply with the whole set of rules and regulations. They have to pay for completely different duties when it comes to transportation, when it comes to trucking. They have to follow completely different weighing regulations and how the permits are issued for these trucks to go from one province to another. There is no doubt why these provinces and why these businesses in those provinces are claiming the fact that it is much easier to sell in US rather than selling in one province to another province in Canada. Your thoughts, Sunny?
Even while King Charles III was opening his throne speech in the Parliament, he kind of mentioned on the same lines that these internal trade barriers cause the economy somewhere close to $52 or $200 billion a year. It's a huge sum. Looking at all the factors involving these tariff talks, this looks like a reasonable thing to do right now. And building a one Canadian economy, building all these 13 provinces into one unison fashion looks like the reasonable way to go. Few things that have created a hurdle in the way are trades like plumbers, electricians, or land surveyor, anything along those lines, even nurses, doctors, lawyers. Some of these trades, when you go from a province to another province, even though the certifications you have, they still need to recertify. It could not be as a whole degree or something, but there's still a year or 2 years or maybe 6 months in some cases, maybe some nothing in some cases as well. But essentially these create an obstacle for a tradesman to or tradeswoman to work from one province to another province. So, for an example, say you have jobs for electricians in Nova Scotia, right? And in Ontario, all the jobs are full, and you have electricians waiting or just looking around, and unemployment being on the rise. In that particular case, you can have electricians go to a high-paying job in Nova Scotia and boost the GDP of the economy of the Canada, while this is not the case. This has created hurdles in these ways. Same goes for businesses as well. Say, for example, you as a winery manufacturer, right? You create wine and you're trying to sell it in from BC to Alberta, or say from Ontario to Quebec. Their laws are different. You need to repackage it, you need to relabel it according to their own provincial laws before you even sell it. So these are the things that are making it harder for the businesses or harder for the tradespeople to work around and have a fair share of the whole economy of Canada. Implementing these things can be seen into growing the economy. Some of the few surveys that we saw could be, for example, right now we see Nova Scotia. I think it's Nova Scotia that is trying to implement all trades from all the provinces, in which you will naturally attract the cream of trades, or you will attract the talent from all the provinces, disregarding the fact of what certificates of which province you have. So say you have a Ontario certifications, you have a Alberta certification. Both of these provinces, both of these workers in these provinces are allowed to work in Nova Scotia, just having by a certificate being checked by a province, being regulated, being stamped on by a province. So we see a lot of provinces now coming up, even with Doug Ford's recent updates as well. A lot of provinces like Nova Scotia is coming up as well to make trade agreements with and signing up, as you said, MOUs with Ontario, and same is being done with Western provinces as well. All of those 4 provinces are being having an agreements in place already. Now this has improved and is going to improve further. This started off in 2017 when they had the agreement in place, which was a Canadian Free Trade Agreement, and now it is being directed into a much further, much better way. And I think that is where we head right now.
Now, this is, don't you agree with me that this thing which is being done right now should have been done almost 10-15 years ago? But again, why hasn't this been done? Like, only God knows what really did the Liberal government was doing under Justin Trudeau. I have little no idea. But anyways, moving on. Now, this one Canadian economy that was proposed by Mark Carney on this June 2nd First Ministers meeting, this is what they were really proposing in this meeting. So let's say there is a development project. A development project could be anything from environmental to building a pipeline to building a dam to building a turbine that easily flows more energy or oil or natural gas between the provinces, that increases the trade domestically or help the country export more towards through the British Columbia or Nova Scotia or Montreal ports to Asian markets. Now, the proposed legislation outlines, but remember this, it does not define, it just outlines at this moment how projects will be chosen for fast tracking, including considerations like Canada's climate objectives and the interests of the indigenous peoples. Now, according to the proposed legislation also, once a project is selected, and by the way, they want the projects to be selected by the new projects office that they want to create. Now, once a project is selected, a project would receive conditional approval under federal regulations. Now, one important thing to remember here. Now, they say that under the proposed legislation, if a project will receive conditional approval. Currently, if you're trying to build a project, be it a mine, be it a pipeline, be it any other environmental development project, if you receive any conditional approval, it does not mean you can start construction or you can start hiring labor to start building the project. It just means that you have a temporary green light, and now you still have to go through the provincial review boards. You still have to conduct meetings with the indigenous communities, and you still have to comply with all other provincial or federal regulations before you can actually get a green light to start construction. But under this proposed regulations, a conditional approval does not mean you still have to go through the provincial compliance review boards and meetings with indigenous communities. No. Under this proposed legislation, apparently, once you receive a conditional approval, you can start building and constructing right away. And the law says the process will then include authorizations based on applicable laws such as the Fisheries Act, the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, the Species at Risk Act, and the Impact Assessment Act. Now, Carney says, now this is what Mark Carney said during that meeting. Mark Carney says 5 factors will be taken into account in considering whether a project is in the national interest. Now again, this is going to be the new, through the new projects office that he wants to create under the new proposed legislation, which was the One Canadian Economy. The 5 factors that will be taken account in considering whether a project is in the national interest. 1, its ability to strengthen Canada's autonomy. Its resilience and security provide economy benefits to Canada. The project has to provide resilience and security, economy benefits to Canada. The project has to advance the interest of Indigenous peoples. The project must contribute to clean growth and have a high likelihood of successful execution. These are some things that he wants the factors to be taken into account for the major project office that he wants to build under the new legislation while choosing a project that they want to give a conditional approval to. Now, regarding labor mobility that you were just talking about for the tradespeople from one province to another, this is what he had to say during the First Minister's meeting. The bill would eliminate federal barriers by making it easier for workers to get a federal license by recognizing provincial or territorial work authorizations for the same job. Federal officials gave the example of a land surveyor in Ontario who would want to work on a federal project but would not need additional certifications in another province to do so. So if a land surveyor is working in Ontario, under the current rules and regulations, he would need another province's license or certifications to conduct the same job there as well. But under the proposed bill, the One Canadian Economy, he would not. He would just have to have, like you said, Sunny, before, he would have to have the same certifications that he has in Ontario, which he will be able to use in other provinces as well. To this, the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who is no longer an MP, had to say that he is actually supportive of this bill. Isn't that curious a little bit? Because how many times have you seen conservatives come out and say that they were supportive of any bill or any legislation that Trudeau had ever proposed in the parliament? This is something rare. This is a moment that you all want to keep in a logbox. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said while the bill does not go far enough to address barriers to interprovincial trade, his party is open to collaborating with the government by proposing amendments to the bill to even build more projects across the country. A lot of interesting things are going to happen very soon. And again, just like you were saying before, other premiers from provinces during that meeting, they were also giving green light to the new legislation that was being proposed by Mark Carney. But again, what Mark Carney did on June 2nd during the First Minister's meeting had already been done by most of the premiers, by most of the provinces, when they signed the Memorandum of Understandings to flow goods, to have the trade and businesses occur between the provinces barrier-free. Any thoughts, Sunny, before we move on to the next topic?
This will actually give like a formal understanding to all the provinces that this is where the nation is headed, and it will just make things easier for all the provinces to work around with anything that they have as well. I think the meeting went well as well. From what reviews we've been getting from other premiers as well, from their open public dialogues, that this was a positive meeting. The outlook looked really promising for all the provinces. All the provinces shared their ideologies, their projects that they're looking to implement, and everything was taken in by the federal government, and they will be reviewing it, of course. And hopefully we'll come to know soon which projects are moving forward and what could the Canadian economy be looking at.